So let's talk about Mahatma Gandhi. Now, he's obviously a massive historical figure, but his ideas were more than just about history. He offered a really profound and honestly pretty radical answer to the problems of the modern world. An answer that, you'll see, still echoes in our politics today. Let's get into it.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at his sharp critique of modernity. Then we'll dig into his two foundational pillars, truth and nonviolence. After that, we'll see how he turned those into political action with satyagraha, what his ideal society of Swaraj looked like, and finally, we'll ask the big question, why do these ideas still matter so much?
You know, to really get to the heart of Gandhiism, you first have to understand what he was pushing back against. For Gandhi, Western civilization wasn't some shining model to copy. To him, it was more like a disease that needed a cure.
I mean, the force of that rejection is just striking, isn't it? He saw modern civilization as obsessed with stuff, with materialism, and he believed that obsession was making it morally bankrupt and spiritually hollow. This wasn't just a minor disagreement for him. It was a fundamental threat to humanity, a poisonous tree choking out all the good stuff around it.
And his critique had very specific targets. In his hugely important 1909 book, Hind Swaraj, he really didn't pull any punches. He argued that lawyers just profited from conflict, that modern medicine made people self-indulgent, that Western education, it just crammed your head with facts but didn't build character. He even called parliament sterile talking shops and saw machinery as a way to concentrate wealth and power in the hands of the few. The bottom line for him was that these modern institutions were actively destroying morality and our ability to rely on ourselves.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what on earth was Gandhi's solution? Well, his entire philosophy, everything he stood for, is built on two core inseparable principles, satya, which is truth, and ahimsa, which is nonviolence.
First, let's talk about satya, or truth. For Gandhi, this was way more than just, not telling lies. It was the ultimate reality, a cosmic principle. He famously said, "Truth is God." So for him, the entire point of life, and by extension politics, was this relentless, ongoing search for this absolute truth.
So how do you actually pursue that truth? Well, for Gandhi, there was only one way, through ahimsa, or nonviolence. But again, this is not a passive thing. It's not just about not hitting people. It's an active state of love and compassion for every living thing. And yeah, that includes your opponents. Ahimsa was the only path, the only means he believed that could ever lead you to the end goal, which is truth. And this is absolutely crucial. You cannot separate them. They are two sides of the exact same coin. You can't have one without the other. Any truth that's achieved through violence isn't real truth. And any act of nonviolence that isn't grounded in a search for truth is just empty. They are totally intertwined.
Okay, so you have the principles, but how do you actually apply them in the messy, real world of politics and injustice? That's where Gandhi's most revolutionary idea comes into play, satyagraha.
Satyagraha literally means holding firmly to truth, but you can also think of it as truth force or soul force. It's a method of conflict that basically weaponizes your own morality. Instead of trying to make your opponent suffer, you invite suffering upon yourself to shock their conscience, to wake them up. The goal isn't to crush them, it's to convert them, to win them over with an act of incredible moral courage. Now, so many people confuse satyagraha with passive resistance, but Gandhi was crystal clear. They are worlds apart. Passive resistance can be a tactic of the weak, and it might still have hatred bubbling under the surface. But satyagraha, that's a weapon of the morally strong. It demands love for your adversary and tries to transform the whole relationship, not just win a fight.
So we have the critique, the principles, and the method. But what was it all for? What kind of society was Gandhi actually trying to build? Well, that was his vision of Swaraj.
For Gandhi, getting the British to leave India was only the first step. And honestly, he thought it was the easier step. True Swaraj, or self-rule, meant ruling over your own impulses, your own desires. It's about individual moral freedom and self-control. He believed a nation full of people who couldn't rule themselves could never, ever be truly free, no matter who was in charge. And that idea of individual self-control is the absolute bedrock of his political vision. His ideal state was this decentralized, almost stateless democracy. Power wouldn't flow from the top down, it would flow from the bottom up. It starts with the individual, who can govern themselves, then the self-reliant village. Think of it like a system of concentric circles, with the individual right at the center. Each village would be its own little republic.
This completely reframes our entire concept of power. I mean, think about it. Conventional politics is all about having power over other people, using force through a big, centralized state. The Gandhian vision is about power to the people. It's a developmental kind of power, one that enables individuals and communities to manage their own lives through cooperation and consent.
So, this brings us to our final and maybe most important section. Why are we still talking about these ideas today? Why does a man who rejected so much of what we call modern still feel so incredibly relevant?
In politics, we hear this all the time, right? Or at least we see it in action. This idea that if your goal is noble enough, it doesn't really matter how you get there.
Well, Gandhi just flips that completely on its head. For him, the means and the end were organically linked. A violent or immoral method could never lead to a peaceful or just outcome. The moral quality of your actions today directly shapes the moral quality of the world you're building for tomorrow. The path you walk is your destination.
And that's really why he's so enduring. His relentless demand for morality in politics is a constant challenge to do better. His method of nonviolent resistance, it continues to inspire movements for justice all over the globe. His call for decentralization feels so incredibly ahead of its time, especially now. And his focus on our duties to each other, not just our rights, offers this powerful, different way of thinking about what it means to be a citizen.
So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. In our complicated, often cynical world, is Gandhi's laser focus on moral means a timeless guide that we can actually use to create change? Or is it a beautiful but ultimately impossible ideal? That's definitely something worth chewing on. Thanks for tuning in.